I'm here on the floor of the Global Energy Show in Calgary with the President CEO of Questerre Energy and Executive Director of the Modern Miracle Network, Michael Binnion. Michael, I've known you quite a while now.
Yeah, that's true.
You're actually one of the guys who helped show me the ropes when I first came to Calgary. So in addition to your own company, Questerre, you've been running the Modern Miracle Network for how many years now?
It's coming up 10 years.
10 years. I've always teased you that that when I tell people about it, I have to tell them it's not a Christian wish network for sick kids. It's an organization that has great work in promoting fossil fuels and the advocacy work around it as a key part of the Western economy. You guys have really set your roots down across the industry to the point where now there's even an influencers component, I think, for all 3 days here of the Global Energy Show, and it's just open today. Do you want to tell us a bit about what role your organization, Modern Miracle Network, played there?
Sure, I'd love to. Well, first of all, you're right. You used to work for me, and look where you are now. It's incredibly impressive what you've been able to do with Western Standard. So thank you. Thank you what you're doing for everybody. It's important that we have Western Standard as an independent news organization in the West. Yeah. So I'll just reference Modern Miracle Network. I mean, the modern miracle we refer to is the miracle of modern society, which is, of course, only comes through affordable energy. I actually say the opposite thing. When people ask me if we're an evangelical society, charity, or a children's charity, I say we absolutely are.
I can see the argument for it.
Yeah, because we think we help children, and we are evangelical about that. We
spreading the good word.
That's right, and we're like you think about infant mortality and equality and all the amazing things about our society. This of course is good for children. Yeah, I think in general, when we started, there was really a movement for Canada to become a leader, a global leader in energy transition, and there was a need to say the other side of the debate. As we said at the beginning, it was we're comparing the benefits of one kind of energy to the costs and impacts of another, and only even a grade 3 kid knows there's a benefit's better than an impact, right? Mm-hmm. So I said we need to have an adult conversation here, but it was really to counter a movement. Today, I think we're in a new position. I think we've now got a situation where Canadians in general believe that we are the best in the world at energy and resources. I think we've got a government that at least is saying the right things about how we need to move forward. And I think the Global Energy Show has recognized advocacy now is about being for this as much as 10 years ago, maybe it was being to show the other side. Now I think we need to push and make sure that we don't stall these projects. As one of our people said today, like we don't want it to be places that projects go to die. So I think advocacy is important as it's ever been, but now we really need to be talking about the real benefits of resources and oil and gas for Canadians, and I think the Global Energy Shows recognize that, and we're happy to be helping.
So your organization, Modern Miracle Network, I think is one of the lesser-known heroes in the fight against the carbon tax.
Right.
I remember even pre-Modern Miracle Network when the very first no one was even talking about carbon taxes, I guess, until Stéphane Dion.
Right.
A bit of a time warp now. We're going back that far, but he had put it forward, and you had helped shape the fight against that in the Canadian Taxpayers Federation before you were over at the Modern Miracle Network. But the Modern Miracle Network played a big role in giving different organizations, tools to fight that. And it was a very long-term fight that has now been not entirely won. We still have the industrial carbon tax. But there has been a decisive turn. If we look one federal election ago, every single major federal political party, including the Conservatives, were running on a carbon tax. Actually, the Conservative carbon tax, I argued at the time, was even worse than the Liberal one. It was nuts. This election, everybody but the Green Party was against the carbon tax, and even the Green Party was a bit sheepish about it.
Right.
That is... if to compare it, I guess, in a sense, to the fight against deficits in the 1990s, you went from a point in the 80s where every party supported deficits to then the early 90s, every party supported spending reductions, tax cuts, balanced budgets. And so we've had just a total shift on that front. I know your organization, it's not the kind of the spokesman in the public for it, but it's kind of arming other people, the advocates in the public for it. Maybe talk about how you guys waged that war against the carbon tax and how successful you think it's been.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things in terms of advocacy that's been one of the most successful things that I've been involved in for sure. And of course, as you know, I was with the Canadian taxpayers for 15 years. I will tell people that do give me credit, full credit, is Corporate Knights, Press Progress, the Tyee, Environmental Defense. Environmental Defense has called me one of Canada's top climate villains. And it's almost all related.
They're all badges to wear,
I suppose, in a sense, right? But of interest, for me, in terms of the success we've had, and we were arguing, what we were really arguing against was a carbon tax that was extraordinarily expensive and extraordinarily inefficient, contrary to what the 332 economists said. Like, as I always said, Marx and Engels were economists too, right? Mm-hmm. So they were just so wrong, and we waged a campaign at multiple levels. I wrote a peer-reviewed paper in Policy Options, or light peer review, I should call. I wrote papers in C2C Journal. We also funded, and I was a reviewer on papers by Navius, by actual studies, economic studies, by Conference Board of Canada, 2 studies we did. And then we also armed people with, hey, look at the actual facts of just how inefficient this is, contrary to what they're all saying. All economists agree. Guess what? All economists didn't agree. So it was an extraordinarily successful campaign. As I said, I've been well recognized by people like Environmental Defense. Of interest, my position and our position on this, which was really that we need to gear up the private sector to deal with climate issues. Like, that's not have the government run it through carbon taxes that get invested into, R&D by government. We need to have a system that will actually motivate the private sector to deal with this problem. And as it turns out, my position that we started with 10 years ago, that Environmental Defense says I'm a climate criminal for, is pretty darn close to what Mark Carney is saying today. And I don't think anybody's saying he's a climate criminal, and I'm certainly not. So I think in terms of, as your point, the success of that campaign, which we really did initiate when the Liberals brought that carbon tax in, we were there at the beginning of that. We were the ones that funded all the counter studies. And I think at the end of the day, to have our position be not the same, but very close to Mark Carney is a huge policy victory.
Well, it's been a pretty decisive turn politically and largely on the policy front. I think the main obstacle on the carbon tax front is now the industrial carbon tax remains. And Carney he has proven to be a better politician than I would have expected for someone who's new to elected politics, but he's not new to the political arena. That's for sure. A long time, and he's he's incredibly adept at saying something that doesn't seem to really anger either side of an issue. He seems to be very good at that. And so when he signed his kind of big executive fake executive order as if he was Trump. I love when they're like, "Oh, you guys are Trumpifying Canadian politics." I'm like, well, we didn't have executive orders until like a week ago. So okay. Yeah. But, he's signing his executive order to get rid of the carbon tax. But he was saying they're going to move the carbon tax more towards the industry. So I took that as meaning probably, does that mean an increase to the industrial carbon tax? Because the industrial carbon tax is still there. Consumer carbon tax, the part we feel most visibly, that's gone. So that's probably a better voter-facing issue. But the carbon tax itself makes the economy uncompetitive. Right. But I don't think the Liberals actually think that. The Liberals actually never thought the consumer carbon tax was a bad thing. They just eventually recognized it was a politically doomed thing. So they jettisoned it for pragmatic political purposes, not for any purposes of principle. What do you think is going to happen on the industrial carbon tax side? It's such an interesting time right now because before the Trump announcements on tariffs and so on and so forth, we were really advocating for a reform of carbon pricing to match what was happening in the United States, where there would have been a carbon price that would have incented private business who we think would have done the job way more effectively and efficiently than government ever could. So we were really arguing for that. And now, of course, the United States, they've got rid of their carbon price. Their Inflation Reduction Act of $85 US a ton. California's still got its state one, but that would be it.
Yeah. So
and maybe a few other states.
Yeah, so at least from a federal point of view, let's call it, right?
Yeah.
So from a federal point of view, they've now got rid of it. And so now I actually haven't sort of taken the time. It's also it's all, you know, a lot of this stuff is also 2024, right? I mean, and we've only had a couple of months of 2025.
2020.
And so in all honesty, I'm looking at, you know, what is the right policy for Canada now on an industrial carbon tax? For sure, it needs to be reformed, because the problem with it the way it is today, any company that, like our company, for example, we've invented a carbon capture technology. Well, if I go and capture carbon, how do I get paid for it? I'm not a big emitter. I don't qualify for any of these programs. So there's a fundamental flaw with the way it is, that a company could invent a new carbon capture technology and not know how to get paid for it, right? So in the system, I'd have to go find some big company to buy it from me, type of thing, right? So there's a fundamental flaw with it. But the bigger question now is, as Trump gets rid of $85 a ton cost on their economy and adds tariffs onto our economy, we need to start really thinking, can we, you know, what industrial carbon price can we actually afford? And I would say that's an important thing for us to be thinking about right now.
Well, I mean, Carty's talked about, I think the term he used was carbon border adjustment. I mean, there's a reason people hate politicians is they don't speak in English. But I mean, but I'll let his benefit.
I'm not against that. I'll tell you why. He's using the economic vernacular, but here's how we'll all understand it.
I thought it was carbon tariff.
Yeah. Okay. But the border adjustment taxes, which was initially proposed some years ago, and the idea of it is like our GST. So you'll remember the debate between the manufacturers and sales tax and the GST.
No, I was 4.
Well, I remember. So the whole point was that the GST was payable only in Canada. So if I manufactured something in Canada and I export it, I get my GST back.
Yeah.
The old tax, I paid the tax, and now I'm trying to compete with somebody in America. I pay the tax, they don't.
Yeah.
So if you want to think about it in those terms, what he's really saying is, I'll pay the carbon tax in Canada, but if I export, I get it back.
Okay.
That's what border adjustment tax means.
I mean, if that's a more charitable reading of it, and I would certainly hope that.
I hope that's what it means.
Yeah, because I was looking at it from a perhaps less charitable view, which is not always correct, that they were going to start throwing carbon taxes on imports coming in.
Oh, they'll do that too, just like the GST. So on imports, it works the opposite. Because under the old manufacturers and sales tax, somebody from Japan could sell something in Canada, not pay the manufacturing tax, and they'd compete against a Canadian business that was.
Yeah.
So the GST fixed all that problem. Because if you import into Canada, you pay the GST. But if you export out, you get it back.
Yeah, so it would still mean higher carbon tax
in Canada.
Carbon tariff costs on Canadians. I guess the answer would be to just get rid of it.
Yeah. If we want to be very competitive with the United States, if all you're worried about is competitiveness, the clear answer is get rid of all of these taxes. We're going to struggle enough to compete with American businesses, given that there's these new tariffs.
If we're elbows up, that would seem to be the obvious solution.
Right. But if you know let's be clear. Lots of people are still concerned about global environmental impacts and so on and so forth. And I'm not saying they're wrong to be concerned about it. I mean, there's a lot of there's global environmental issues I'm concerned about, right? And so where's the balance there in terms of being purely focused on competitiveness, but still trying to do what you can for the environment, right?
Well, let's switch gears a bit back to kind of where the conversation started from. The role of the Modern Miracle Network and the Global Energy Show here. Well, I've been coming to this for a few years. You've been coming to this event a lot longer than me. Yep. But I see, this a whole new component added to this. There's the executive stuff, which is more business focused. There's political speakers here. But then there's a whole other wing added to this on kind of those in advocacy and influence around the energy sector. I mean, it's not strictly hydrocarbon based here. There's literally Korean nuclear guys over there and all sorts of stuff. But I mean, this is Calgary. It's dominantly oil and gas.
Right.
Do you think, what does that say about kind of how the mainstreaming of Western Canadian energy advocacy as kind of a pushback? If you look back 10 years, it's purely Engels. It was all one side, and it was against. It was damn near unanimous so it seems a lot more diverse today, to the point where there's a 3-day conference on this stuff here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's extremely interesting what you're saying, the cultural shift, and the what's acceptable to say, and that the silent majority isn't so silent anymore, and I mean all these kind of changes. We'd like to think that, a lot of that happened because of events. We think that a lot of that also happened because of advocacy, that people did start, people that Modern Miracle Network works with, as we're an industry association, but we coordinate with groups that are helping to take the oil and gas and Canadian resources generally, forestry, mining. We're really a Canadian resource organization, and we're working with all these different groups to take that message to Canadians. And I think that, I think one of our core main messages to counter the 2015 Canada has the dirtiest oil in the world. If you'll remember that, everybody knew that because everybody said that, right?
Oh, we had Neil Young coming up here and all that,
So if you imagine, here we are 10 years later, and the message that we started with in our group of Canada is the best in the world, it has really been one of the most viral messages that I've ever been involved with. It activated the silent majority, those people who said there's something wrong here, but I don't know what the counter argument is. It got a lot of other people thinking, oh, well, maybe it's not as so one-sided a debate as we thought. And then, of course, the Ukraine war happened.
I woke up a lot of people, yeah.
And that all of a sudden people understood, oh, energy security is an issue. We've seen these incredible blackouts in Spain and other countries that have gone way too far into interruptible power. We've seen the Trump tariffs, and all of a sudden, this special relationship with the United States isn't what we thought it was. Maybe we need to be thinking about our economic and energy security here in Canada too. So all of these major events have also played into, but I think they played into a cultural milieu where the conversation had already started to change.
I agree. Well, is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I just will finish. I just keep up the great work. We really need independent media in this country.
Oh, I appreciate that very much. Yeah. Thank you. All right, well, that's Michael Binnion. He is President and CEO of Questerre Energy and the Executive Director of Modern Miracle Network.
Thank you, Derek.
Yes, thank you.